This is The Take, and welcome. I'm Pete Najarian, and welcome to Market Rebellion. I got to tell you, the markets, we talk about earnings season all the time, and what do we kick it off with? We kick it off with the financials, and we are right in the heart of it all. And we kicked it off earlier this week. And you look at Monday, where was the XLF trading? It was trading around 22.70. You go over to Tuesday, you look at it, it's trading around 23, closed around 22.60. But then Wednesday, yesterday, down to 21.60. And what was the pressure that was going on and a lot of the concerns with the financials? Well, so far, we've heard from JP Morgan, Citi, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, all of which yesterday were down 5% or even close to 6%. So a big pounding down on these financials, certainly influencing the markets. And we look over at the S&P, down close to 2%. You look over at the Dow Industrials, down close to 2%. The NASDAQ, little bit better yesterday, but still down about 1.5%. Now you look at crude oil as well, and we've been talking about this a little bit more over the last couple of weeks because of the dramatic moves and just the continual pressure that seems to be on oil. Even as it makes big moves up towards 28 or 30, the pressure just seems to be there that it's not going to be able to pierce through there, and it hasn't so far. As a matter of fact, it pierced through 20 yesterday, hung around in the 19s for a little while. So it gives you a little sense of just what is working, what's not working. Certainly energy not working at this point in time. Now, we talk about the volatility all the time. We were trading right around that 42 to 43 yesterday for most of the day. We pulled back a little bit late in the day. We were off as much as 700 points yesterday before recovering and finishing off a little bit closer to 450 points or thereabouts. But you look at the VIX, it jumped up about 8%. We closed right around that. We talk about the low 40s, and that's kind of where it feels like it wants to be, at least for a little while. I'm going to talk a lot more about the VIX a little bit later now, but that's a little bit of a teaser. So what were some of the positives yesterday in the market? Well, United Health really looked great yesterday. They beat and they beat. Stock was up about 4%, 11 bucks on the day. Nice big move. Actually, it's powering the markets a little bit, being one of the positives today as well. So a couple of days really been one of the big winners. What's a loser today is Boeing. What was a winner yesterday was also Boeing. Boeing was up about 3.5%. So those are some of the positives. But that narrow NASDAQ area that we've been talking about time and time and time again here, look at Netflix, look at Tesla. I'll throw in a name even like an Activision. And there's a commonality here to a lot of these names. Amazon's always been a name that we bring up as well. But what's happening? People are needing things shipped to them. People are obviously streaming and all of the staying at home. I've heard many of the CEOs out there with any kind of exposure at all towards the gaming cycle. They've been talking about that as well. So the other thing that really stuck out to me yesterday, though, was some of the Chinese names that actually had a pretty good day. NetEase and JD and some of those kind of names. Now today, the markets in the pre-market, they were kind of all over the place, but we've been talking about this contracted picture that we've been seeing for a while now in terms of the overall moves and the contraction of those moves. Well, we had a lot of volatility, and yet years ago, months ago, it would have seemed like a lot of movement. On the markets that we've had over the last 5-6 weeks wasn't nearly as big. And as a matter of fact, when you look at up 100, down 100, somewhere in that sort of a category, and everybody was waiting on one number, those jobless claims. And what the predictions were for about 5 million. Well, it was a little bit worse than that, but it was an improvement from the previous week. The previous week, we were at 6.6 million. This time, reported about 5.25 million. So is it improving? Yes. I've actually heard a lot of folks even talking about looking at the jobless area as, wow, are we starting to see the curve start to flatten a little bit? We've gotten so caught up in the pandemic, and we're looking for curve flattening and all the rest of it. Well, maybe we're seeing a little bit of it, at least that's what the talk is, in the jobs area and the joblessness and some of those numbers. But those numbers are huge, guys. 4 weeks now, and we've lost 22 million jobs. So that is very critical. It's a number that is extraordinary. It's difficult to even comprehend. And if this continues, we are going to see ourselves in a position where it really has shifted all the way back, and you are wiping away an amazing amount of a run of years in the marketplace in just a very short period of time. So I talk about the influence of the coronavirus and what's happening really in the financial world, and that's where we really focus because that's where the earnings really have focused in this early part of the earnings season. And the markets just don't seem to be impressed with the numbers. The earnings numbers themselves, I think folks might be able to look past that, but just having such a difficult time looking into the future. And I think that's part of the pressure that you're seeing on these many of these various companies, and the moving of billions of dollars to cover some of the potential loan losses that folks are looking at as well. So, you know, it makes this whole process a lot more difficult for us to all sort of break down, but we have to work through this. And also yesterday, one of the numbers that we also heard shouldn't be surprising, although maybe this had a little bit of a push to the downside of the markets as well, is the retail. Well, why wouldn't the retail, if we have shut down, it makes some common sense that certainly retail is going to have some numbers that are not going to be very impressive, because if we're completely shut down and it's literally just takeout, or even in the case of Costco and some of these names where they are open, essentials are open, but people have to be staggered and all the rest of that in lines, and how many people can be, obviously that's going to be a major impact. So that's something that we're facing as well. Well, as of right now, before I came on, we were down about 1% on the Dow, but we were up about 1% on the NASDAQ. I'm going to give you a quick refresh. We're down a little bit less now, down about, call it, a little over 0.5% on the Dow. The NASDAQ, however, continues to be up 1%. And what's powering that? Well, Microsoft, Netflix, I'm looking at Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD. You look at the semis, once again, the semiconductor index, once again, just really, really strong. So, by the way, I should have had this on. Guys, this is something at theminnesotan.com. Check out that, theminnesotan.com. They've got all kinds of cool stuff. I've been talking with my guy, Corey, over there. They do such a great job. They have quality stuff. I've got the take on right here, this shirt as well. Matter of fact, let me show you this one. Talk about your giddy ups. You've seen this one maybe in the past as well. But those guys are doing a great job. They put some of the money that they get that's going to charity, has been forever. That's been who they are for a long period of time since they opened. But they have actually joined in, and it's great to see them wanting to be a part of this, being a part of being able to make some of this great clothing and wear. We've got golf shirts. We've got all this great stuff. For those of you that want that, theminnesotan.com is the place to go, and you can check it out, the Giddy Up site. They've even got their own little section for that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun. So back, I said I was going to revisit the VIX. Well, here's the revisit of the VIX. When you're looking at it right now and you're saying, well, it's 42, 43. I'm looking at it right this very second, a little bit below 42. There was a gigantic, and I'm talking unusual option activity here, a gigantic trade in there today in the VIX. Now, the VIX can trade huge numbers, and this is an indice where when they come in, the big boys, they come in with monstrous numbers. So this, compared to some of those monstrous numbers, pales in comparison. But 15,000 of the July 22, that's the expiration part of that. But the July 22s, it's the 40 calls that they're buying. So they're buying the calls right where we are right now, but they're also selling the July 45s. They're selling a downside put. What does all this mean? The big unusual option activity we're seeing today in the volatility index is basically trying to give us the idea that volatility is here to stay. And it sure seems like that, because the movement that we are getting each and every day continues to be fairly large moves. Now, like we talked about, the contraction, absolutely. We are not seeing the 1,200 point moves as frequently as we had been, or the 2,000 point moves as we have been. But we have been seeing some serious movement. Yesterday, a great example, down about 700 points at one point in time, and return of the dog. 700 points at one point in time, and then actually finishing down less than 500 points. But a fairly volatile day once again. And so we are seeing some major moves, but certainly that movement is contracting. Now, when we look at the volatility, just always remember this. A 32 VIX is going to give you about a 2% move standard every single day in the S&P 500. You start getting up to 48, which we are still below that number, you're looking for something more than or thereabouts of a 3% move every single day. So we really are priced right now to what we are seeing. We are seeing 2% moves. We're seeing 2.5% moves. Those kind of moves fairly consistently today. We've narrowed it down a little bit, but the overall movement, well, the dog's coming in here regardless. He's pushing me over. Regardless, you can expect to see some of these moves, and we have seen some moves already today in the marketplace itself. Guys, I'm Pete Najarian. This is the Market Rebellion. Excuse the dog, but I'll tell you what, check out my guys over at theminnesotan.com. Do a little bit of shopping. These guys are doing the right thing. They got quality stuff, and they are donating part of the proceeds towards charity. So you got to love that. Giddy up.